Today we're kicking off hurricane season. What do you need to do? When do you need to leave? What do you need to pack? That's what we're going to be talking about today to get you ready for this hurricane season. This is Jessica Duncan's Just My Opinion, and I'm Jessica. There's no handbook to owning a home. That's why I go beyond the transaction to share my tips and insights for adulting made simple. So today we are going to talk about hurricanes. So we are kicking off hurricane season. June the 1st was the official first day of hurricane season. And if you have been anywhere around Florida for any length of time, you've probably experienced some hurricanes. I know I've been through quite a few in my lifetime, being a Florida long-term resident, that I was born and raised here. So, of course, we remember Sally was the most recent, really bad one. That was in 2020. We had about 30 inches of rain. So Sally was a little different. It wasn't one that created a lot of destruction, other than it set on top of us and dropped 30 inches of rain. And that's where the destruction came from, lots of flooding. And then we can go back to Ivan that happened in 2004. So that was a pretty devastating hurricane. Lots of winds, lots of roof damage, lots of trees down, lots of storm surge. That was probably one of the worst ones of my lifetime. But then we go back to ones like Hurricane George. I think that was in 98 or 99, somewhere in there. It was just a lot of storm surge. Only in certain areas were affected, and most areas weren't affected very much at all. So every hurricane is going to bring a different type of damage. So what we're going to go over today is how to be prepared for all of them, no matter what type of hurricane's coming and what type of damage it will be, because a lot of times we don't know until after a hurricane happens. And we also don't always know exactly when they're coming. We call it living in the cone of uncertainty in Florida. So whenever a hurricane's coming, they always give us this cone of uncertainty. And if you're in the cone of where it could be, then you want to make plans, be aware, stay alert. So we joke about living in the cone of uncertainty for part of the year. But that cone is very important because, as we have learned, both in Sally and Ivan, they were both projected to go other places. And then at the last minute, they turned and came towards us. Matter of fact, Sally was definitely planning on going towards Louisiana. Everyone said it was going towards Louisiana. And literally in the last minute, 12 to 14 hours, it made a hook to the right and came up and hit us, and no one was prepared for it. So you always want to be prepared. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What can you do now to get ready? How can you prepare your house? What should you have in your kit? And then what should you do after a storm? So let's dig right in as we talk about what you can do for your house getting ready for hurricane season. So as we start hurricane season, it's a good idea every year to look at these things. So let's start with your windows and doors. You may have been in this house for years, or it could be the first time you are going through a hurricane season on this house. But you want to look at your windows and your doors and figure out, well, do you have hurricane protection? If you do have shutters, make sure you know where all the pieces are. Maybe practice putting them up one time. Make sure you know how to do it while you're in a calm situation, not a stressful situation. If you don't have hurricane shutters or impact windows, maybe consider getting those. You can also get some insurance discounts for getting those. So if you add them to your house or you upgrade your windows to impact, you want to get a updated insurance inspection report, which is called a 4-point, and wind mitigation report, because they could give you some discounts for spending that money on your house. But so you may want to look at getting shutters. Shutters can run, not replacing the windows, just the shutters, a couple $1,000s versus, if you are looking at replacing the windows and going with impact, on average about $25,000. So pretty big difference in price. If you are already looking to replace your windows because they need to be replaced, you may consider doing impact, compare the cost. But either way, if you're replacing your windows, you're definitely going to have hurricane shutters, if not impact windows, because the new code requires it. Also, when you're looking at your roof, walk around, make sure there's no loose shingles. Your roof boots are very important. So that the roof boot is normally a rubberized gasket that goes around some sort of exhaust that's coming out of your roof. A lot of times they're exhaust for over your stove, exhaust for a bathroom, things like that. Exhaust for if you have a HVAC system that uses gas for heater, but you have some sort of protrusion coming out of the top of your roof. There's going to be a rubberized gasket there around that. Those things deteriorate and should be replaced about every 5 years, unless you've changed them out to some sort of aluminum or something like that. So definitely look at those because that's the first place the leak will happen. So you want to look over that roof, make sure your shingles are in good shape, make sure you don't need any repairs there. If you are replacing your roof or if you don't have hurricane clips, that is one thing to consider as well. It generally runs about $2,500 to add hurricane clips to a property. But then again, you also get that insurance discount. So a lot of these things that you can do to your house, you're going to get a discount for. Trees. Let's talk about trees. So I am not a fan of pine trees. Pine trees have shallow roots and they're the first to fall. Now, I'm not saying any other tree can't fall because we've definitely seen a lot of oak trees fell during Ivan, but your pine trees are the first ones to fall. And the reason why are because they have shallow roots and they go really, really tall, right? So gravity just takes effect as they're swinging back and forth and they don't have that deep root system like our oak trees. Every property we've ever owned, if there is a pine tree that can fall on my house, it comes out immediately. I don't like pine trees for that reason. I don't mind them on the property, but I don't want them where they can fall on my house. So make sure if you need to look around your property, make sure you don't have those trees that can fall on your house. Now, our oak trees are a little different. They do have deeper roots, as well as oak trees are protected in some parts of our area. So be careful there. If you are going to have an oak tree removed, make sure you're hiring a licensed person who knows the laws around that. We have some protection for oak trees in different areas here. And truthfully, if you're going to take down trees around your house that could fall on your house, it's probably best to hire a professional. We don't want you to be cutting a tree down and it fall on your house. Look at all the branches of those trees, though. Are there branches hanging over your roof that can easily fall on your roof? Those you're going to want to trim up as well. Make sure you're getting ready for this hurricane season and you don't have a big branch hanging over your roof that could easily break and fall on your roof. Next, you want to look at your insurance. Let's make sure you have the right insurance and the right amounts of insurance. So you want to get your policy out and make sure you have that included in some of your important paperwork. You want to create sort of a box of paperwork. If you've closed with us, you have a box for all of your stuff on your house that you can take with you in this event and add other things in an emergency. But you want to make sure that policy is enough to replace your house in its condition right now. So what do I mean? Well, if you've been in that house for 15 years and your policy was the same amounts 15 years ago, building costs have went up a lot. You may not have your house insured for enough. I was talking to a customer the other day and they were telling me that their house was insured for like $400,000. Now, I can tell you that that house would not sell for anything less than $950,000 right now. And I quickly did the math in my head. I'm like, okay, let's just say rebuild $250 a square foot. Oh, wow, you are way underinsured at their square footage. I'm like, hey, you may need to look at increasing that. Their house was insured for the amount when they purchased it, building cost was. A lot of times your insurance will increase that over the years, but sometimes they miss it. So make sure you have enough insurance. Also, look at your personal belongings and your limits under each issue. So like how much do you have in electronics? How much do you have in silver? If you have antiques, things like that. Make sure there's enough coverage to cover what you own. Another big one that I think a lot of people miss is how much do you have in temporary housing? So let's say a hurricane comes through, wipes your house out, you can't live there for a year. You're going to have to rent something for 1 year to live in. Is there enough of short-term housing coverage there to get you through 1 year? That's the good goal, is 1 year. So make sure that there's enough. If there's not enough there, reach out to your insurance agent and see what you can do to increase your coverage. Do you have flood insurance or not? You know, you want to look at that. If you're in a flood zone, you definitely will have flood insurance and need to have flood insurance. You may not be in a flood zone though, and maybe it's a good idea to have flood insurance. You know, if you ever had standing water in your yard, then you may want to have flood insurance. It's always a great precaution as an extra layer of protection to add that flood insurance. Even if you're not in a flood zone, just think about it. I think it's also a great idea once a year in the beginning of hurricane season. It's always a great time to do this, to do a home inventory. So this doesn't have to be too elaborate of a process. I mean, you can go and track every little detail, but you know, I think as a general rule, take your iPhone, film your house in a couple different segments, maybe one video per room, and really document everything you have. I can tell you after Ivan, I had family members trying to fill out the paperwork and how many forks did you have? Do you remember how many forks you have in your drawer right now? Even if you know right now, after a hurricane, you may not remember that. That is not the most important file you were trying to open in your brain at that particular moment. So go through and document everything in your house so that you can pull it back up and have a good idea of what you did have and make sure you can submit that to the insurance company accurately. So we've talked about what you can do to harden your home. We've talked about the right insurance. Now let's talk about inspecting the property. We talked about the roof a little already and also those roof boots and the trees. But what else can you do around your house? Let's walk around the house, and I'd like to look at all the windows. We put sealant or caulk around the windows that deteriorates, and that really should be redone about every 5 years on a property. A lot of people forget about that maintenance. So walk around your property and look at that. Is that a place that a water leak can come in? And if so, you may need to have those resealed or recaulked. Look for areas, though, that could be an issue during a storm. Has that light hanging on the side of the house started to fall off? Maybe you need to get that fixed. Check for the drainage paths around your property as well. Do you have good drainage around the property? Is there a county easement behind your property that has a drainage system that trees have fallen down in and debris over the years? Maybe you need to call and report that to the county. Just look at those drainage areas that were built when your subdivision was built and make sure everything has been cleared out. There's no debris in their path so that if we have a huge amount of rain like Sally, that water all has a place to go. So part of your inspecting your home you want to think about is your generator. Do you have a whole home generator? If so, make sure it's serviced, make sure it's working properly. I know many people had a whole home generator that didn't work during Sally, and how disappointing was that? So make sure it's been serviced and everything's good there. If you don't have a whole home generator, but you have one of the portable generators, make sure you know how to properly use it. You can get an electrician out there to put the right type of plugs there so you're not risking the electrocution that you could cause yourself or others by sending power back down the line. So be very, very careful of that. But make sure you know how to start it. Service that generator. Make sure there's no work that needs to be done. Make sure that old gas didn't sit in it all year and clog up that carburetor. Make sure you get that generator serviced. If you have old gas, it's probably a good time to change it out and also get new gas for this hurricane season. You know, gas does go bad. You can't just leave it sitting forever. There are some stabilizers you can put in it to help, but go ahead and do that ahead of time. That way, when the storm's on the way and everyone's freaking out, trying to fill every vehicle and every gas can, hopefully you just have to fill your vehicles and you have your gas already set there for the season. You also want to plan for what you're going to take with you. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, having that box with your homeowner's insurance, but you want to gather up all your important documents that you're going to take with you. You need to have, birth certificates, marriage license, all of your insurance, of course, different things that you could need like stocks, paperwork, bonds that are irreplaceable, all your account numbers, your mortgage contact info. All very important. So get all your important paperwork together. Make sure you know where it all is and it's easy to grab in a container that you can take it and go when you're ready to evacuate. So let's talk about planning for this evacuation. Guys, this is a big deal. A lot of people wait and fail to plan for their evacuation. And then what happens is a day before the storm, they're like, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Everyone's trying to get a hotel room or whatever, trying to come up with a plan. Don't be that guy. Let's plan ahead. Figure out what you're going to do. Have a plan for your family. And I think if you have extended family that lives around here, it's really good to let them know what your plan is as well. Because growing up here, I can't tell you how many times the conversations happen between my aunts and my uncles, my grandparents. Hey, are y'all going to evacuate? Are y'all going to evacuate? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Have a plan ahead of time and avoid all of that stress that is unnecessary. So figure out what your family's plan is going to be and then maybe communicate it to your other family members and encourage them to have a plan. So your plan needs to include, when are we going to evacuate? So what are the parameters that you want to evacuate in? Everyone has a different level of comfort there, so figure out where you're comfortable with. Of course, you need to know your evacuation zone. So our area is all split up into evacuation zones. So when they tell you your zone is a voluntary evacuation or a mandatory evacuation, that may play into when you evacuate. It may not. Your comfort zone may be way ahead. You may have a family member that requires special medical attention or oxygen or things like that. So your evacuation plans may be different, but have a plan, create that plan of when you are going to evacuate and where you're going to go. So where are you going to go? If sometimes people say, well, I'm just going to go north, or they'll go east, or they'll go west. What if the storm is going that direction? So maybe have one plan or a backup plan. If you're going to go to a family member's house, maybe you got a family member that lives in Atlanta or somewhere a little bit further north, but out of the major impact of a hurricane. That could be a great idea. Hotel rooms can be hard to get sometimes. So you want to have this plan ahead of time. There's so many times people wait to the last minute and then they end up stuck on the interstate. And you don't want to be stuck on an interstate evacuating last minute when a hurricane is hitting. Don't forget about your pets too. If you have cats or dogs, make sure you consider them with your evacuation plan. Are they going to be able to go with you? Don't leave them at home. We saw this happen so much after Ivan, and so many dogs were separated, and they're terrified going through a hurricane just like you are, and they're looking for their loved ones. So make sure you have a plan for your dog or your kitties or whatever pets you have. Make sure you have a plan for them to evacuate with you. So I talked about your evacuation zone just briefly, but I want to make sure you understand that. So you need to go and figure out what your zone is, because they're going to start talking in zones when they talk about evacuations. Hey, this is voluntary, this is mandatory. What a mandatory evacuation means for a zone is that if you stay, you are giving up the ability to have any type of emergency services. They're telling you, we recommend you leave, but if you choose to stay, the ambulance will not come and the police will not come to help you. So you want to take that into deep consideration and know what your zone for evacuation is. That way, if you hear them talking about it, you can make a decision and have all of that lined up ahead of time. It's also a great idea to know the resources available in evacuation purposes in your county. So if you go to myescambia.com as well as santarosa.fl.org, both of them have emergency management systems on there that will let you know evacuation shelters and things like that. So make sure you're familiar with those sites. They're going to give you a lot of information on top of what I'm giving you to help you know what zone you're in and also the resources that could be out there in the event you do have to evacuate. A lot of times they'll also provide sandbags and things like that leading up to it. If you're not familiar with what sandbags are used for, they are, if you're in an area and you're worried about water protruding into the house, you can put sandbags down to stop that water intrusion and help give you another line of defense against the water. So make sure you check out whichever county you're in, check out their emergency management system. Make sure you are comfortable with it. Make sure you understand the evacuation routes, the evacuation zones, as well as the resources that are available in your county. All right, so when you're planning your evacuation route, another thing that you want to really think about is bridge closures. So we're in an area that a lot of areas have bridges, and to evacuate, a lot of times we have to cross bridges. Our bridges close normally around 39 miles per hour sustained winds. So not gusts, but sustained winds at about 39 miles per hour. They will shut the bridges down. Now, they'll also shut them down if there is expected a storm surge. I know Garcon Point Bridge, they generally shut down about a 2 to 4 foot storm surge. If that is projected, even if the winds aren't quite there, they will shut that down. I think Pensacola Beach, they do the same. So know your bridges you're going to have to cross to evacuate and at what point they're going to close down, because you want to monitor those as well. Next, you want to stock up on your supplies. So what am I talking about supplies? So we're going into hurricane season. Make sure you have these items on hand. You've got your storm kit ready. As a general rule, you want to have 3 to 7 days worth of water, food, medications, all those types of things you're going to need. You want to be ready for 3 to 7 days on you, 3 to 7 days without power. We used to say first 3 on you, which meant 3 days are on you. I will tell you, we have learned over the hurricanes, a lot of people were out of power for almost 2 weeks, some people even longer. So we've learned over the years that maybe at least a week is a little bit more reasonable. So you want to have a gallon of water per day per person in your family. So just make sure you have gallons of water available for the number of people in your household. Now's a good time to get them and be stocked up for that hurricane season. At the beginning of each hurricane season, restock your supplies. Make sure you have all this stuff. Food, you got to have food. Now, if we don't have electricity, how are we going to eat? What are we going to cook on? We're not going to have a stove or a microwave. So make sure you have food that is easy to heat up, maybe on a gas grill, or even that doesn't require any heating. You can open up a can of green beans and eat it without actually having to heat it up. Have protein bars and ready to eat stuff like that. For us, I know we're going to grill out a lot because if my freezer starts to go out of power, if we go out of power in my freezer, everything's going to start thawing. We're going to need to cook up that meat as soon as possible. So having a full gas tank for my gas grill is really important to me, with a backup, because I know I'm going to grill a lot. So you're going to get your water, you're going to get your food, you're ready to eat food. Flashlights. Make sure you have flashlights and batteries for them. You got to check those each year. Those old batteries could have expired or are drained. Make sure you're ready with those flashlights and batteries. And if you're like my husband and you have to have the headlamp that is hands-free, have some of those. We also have backup batteries that we keep charged, as well as a solar battery, so we can charge devices and things like that. They make these really cool solar device batteries. So it's a battery pack that you can put out in the sun and it recharges itself. They're great for out on the boat, as well as in a hurricane to recharge a lamp or a flashlight or something like that. Make sure you have a good first aid kit packed and ready. And don't forget about supplies for your pets. Remember, they are your family members too. So what food are they going to need? Make sure you keep enough food and things on hand for them. If you have an animal that requires medication, always make sure you have at least 7 days worth for them as well. But remember, they are a member of your family, so don't forget about them. Weather radios. So weather radios are important, guys. I don't know if you've been through a hurricane or not, but if you haven't, when we have a hurricane, a major one, we also lose cell service. So you can't check the TV, you can't check your cell phone. A lot of times you can't get online. There's no cell service available. So how are you going to get information and know what's going on? The best way is a radio. So they make these really cool weather radios. They keep you up to date on the storm, but also you can tune into local radio stations and know what is going on and get that emergency information going. Our radio stations in the past here have been amazing support through hurricanes, and I'm sure in the future they will be as well. So make sure, and that's a good reason really to support local radio. Just so you know, I'm a big supporter of that because they have been here through these storms with us. And in these emergencies, you will see their value so much. So make sure you have one of those weather radios that you can listen into the local radio stations, as well as get the weather alerts as they are happening. All right, so we've talked about hardening your home. We've talked about the insurance. We've talked about planning for your evacuation, stocking up on your supplies, bridge closures, how to know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. But what about those hurricane shutters? I always get asked this. So when should I put my hurricane shutters up? So remember, at the beginning of hurricane season, make sure you know how to put them up, so you're not stressed in an emergency. Make sure you know where they all are. You have all the screws, all that kind of stuff. But when should I put them up when a hurricane is coming? So as a general rule, it's 48 to 72 hours before the storm is projected to hit landfall. Now, if you are leaving town prior to that, you may need to install them prior to that. So when you're building your plan and you know when you're going to leave town, how far in advance you're going to leave town, don't forget to add that in there. Install the hurricane shutters. If you're going to be leaving in the middle of hurricane season, and maybe we have a lot of snowbirders sometimes that will go up north for the summer and spend their winters here, it wouldn't be a bad idea to put them on for the season. But if you are going to just leave maybe 4 days in advance, maybe it's a good idea to go ahead and put those on before you go. So 48 to 72 hours is a general rule, but if you're going to leave in advance, you'll want to put those hurricane shutters on in advance. All right, so we've talked about all the stuff to do to get ready for the storm, what to have in your storm prep. What do you do post-storm, though? Okay, a storm is hit. Now what do I do? So the first thing is make the right decision to come home when the time is right. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times people are in a big hurry to get back when they may not actually be able to get back yet. So make sure the bridges are open. Our police force around here has been really good about protecting areas and not letting just anyone back in. You have to prove that you live there with your driver's license and things like that to get in. So make sure it's a safe time to come back and you are going to be able to get back to your home. You want to assess the damage. safely. So there could be down power lines, there could be stuff that could hurt you. Be very careful and assess the damage. And then you want to call your insurance agent. So your agent, not your insurance company. So generally you have a person who represents you who helped write that policy. And a lot of our insurance agents here in Florida write for multiple companies. So you want to reach out to that agent and ask them what to do. The reason why is you want their guidance on how and if you should file a claim. I can tell you after Sally, we had a lot of people call me and they wanted to file an insurance claim and they called me with advice on how to do it. And their insurance deductible may have been $5,600 and they had $7,000 worth of damage they were thinking about filing a claim for. I was like, well, you may want to think about that because $7,000, your deductible is $5,600. You realize you're filing a claim for a very, very little amount. And so you want to think about that. You also don't want to file a claim if maybe your deductible is going to exceed the actual amount of damage. So let's say you had a fence down in your backyard and that was your only damage. Well, generally fences are only at 50% of their value anyway. So maybe you had $4,000 worth of fencing that needs to be replaced and your deductible was $5,600. Would that have made sense to file a claim? No, but you just did. So make sure you reach out to that agent and let them advise you. They'll also advise you on things you can get rid of or not get rid of. You know, maybe you want to secure the property a little bit more. You want to secure it to make sure it doesn't continue to get damaged, but there's certain precautions you need to take and maybe pictures, things like that. So reach out to your insurance agent right away. Then you also want to seek aid. You know, a lot of times when this happens, FEMA will come in, they declare it a natural disaster. So FEMA and United Way will have some emergency funds to help you in an emergency situation, whether it's getting a clean and dry bedding for a couple days or getting blue tarps, whatever it may be. Seek out that aid. Unfortunately, after these storms, some people want to come into our area and take advantage of others. So be vigilant, be aware, make sure you're not falling for any of these scams. One of the things that I love most about our community is when a storm happens, when we see everyone come together, you really see this community and the love for one another. I hate to see hurricanes happen. I hate to see the damage. Obviously, I don't ever want anyone to be hurt or lose their life, but I do and love seeing the neighborhood just come together to help one another. It's such a great experience. So while I don't want any of that to happen, you know, be there for your neighbor and be the good neighbor that they're going to be to you. But y'all look out for one another and watch out for these scams. Each week I do a home hack, and it's just something to help you as a homeowner, whether it's an app, a tip, a checklist, just something to help make homeownership easier, this adulting made simple. So this week, of course, it is going to be our hurricane checklist. So what to pack in your hurricane go kit so that you're ready for this hurricane season. Just shoot me a DM and we'll get that right over to you. This has been Just My Opinion. I'm so happy you joined me today. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast app you listen to us on so that you never miss an episode. If you have a question for us or a topic for a show, please shoot me a message, DM me, or give me a call, text me. We'd love to hear it, and we may just have you on the show. Remember, it's just my opinion for adulting made simple.